Octo is pleased to bring you this Planner Unplugged series in partnership with Scottish Widows, focused on helping advisors deliver better outcomes for clients today and in the future. Hello and welcome to the latest episode of Planner Unplugged from Octo members. I'm Katie Picton, Content Director, and as ever, I'll allow my guest to introduce themselves if that's okay. So Luke, over to you.
Yeah, hi. So I'm Luke. I'm a former medical doctor and turned financial planner with Quilter. So I've just gone through their academy and starting life as a self-employed financial planner. So thank you for having me.
Thank you very much for joining us. So Luke, you mentioned former doctor. That's quite the transition from that profession to this one. Most people I talk to stumbled into financial advice in some way or another. Yours sounds more of an intentional route, perhaps, after a different career elsewhere.
Yeah, it was definitely a very targeted move. So to tell you a bit of the story, so I'd spent 6 years in the NHS and didn't see a future I was happy with there, which I'm sure there are the others feeling the same at the minute, and was working out what I wanted to do with my life after I decided I didn't want to be a doctor in the NHS anymore, and went to do some work experience with a good family friend who was an advisor. Mark said to me, it's basically like being a GP. It's just you're talking about finances instead. And so I was a bit suspicious.
Yeah.
And I said, well, I'll give it a go. There's no harm in just seeing what it's like. And as soon as I saw him working with clients, it was pretty much love at first sight. So just spending a few hours with them and really getting to know their life and their context and making the plans up. And I liked how it was a mix of the technical stuff, but it was also very personal and human, which is kind of what I hoped GP would be, which I didn't find it that way. Hence why I'm here. But yeah, so I saw him do it. I said, how do I get into this profession? And he said, that's the difficult bit, but go and start doing your exams. So I started doing those off my own back and then looked all around the Sheffield area where I'm based, put my CV out everywhere. And the only options I got were from academies. And so I joined a Quilter in April last year. So yeah, it was quite a deliberate move. I certainly didn't stumble into it.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, it's nice to hear because eventually I'd like to get to a point where most guests do say they intentionally came into this, and hopefully hearing stories like yours, it may inspire other people to do the same if it is something that they've been considering. But you mentioned now's the hard part then of how you get into it. What was your understanding of it then? Because there are different ways in, and like you say, there's the academy routes. And I think for those that are considering it, is it just a bit of a minefield of how do you go about these things?
Yeah, I mean, originally I was going to join his practice, but just circumstances and the fact that I live 200 miles away from him being the main one was the reason we didn't go down that route. So, but yeah, I think the ideal is someone you know, someone you trust who already has an established practice and sort of nurture you into the role and help you get through your exams and teach you how to actually do the job. Like I said, I tried to do that within Sheffield, and just because I had no background going into financial services, I didn't have many connections. And so, yeah, there wasn't any opportunity there really. It might be that if someone is wanting to get into the profession, it would be good to start with people that you know who are in it, and there may well be opportunity there. I know that there are lots of people about to retire, as we know from the industry.
Yeah.
It's very top heavy. So there may be opportunity there for succession. And I'm sure there's lots of firms looking for people that they trust and they can see potential in. But I think for the majority, actually, we don't have those connections, and it takes the bigger companies to bring people on board, really. And I suppose there's the getting your qualifications and becoming an advisor. And then there's actually building your business, which is a whole different kettle of fish, which I'm dealing with at the minute. There's several barriers all at once in a row. But I think the thing that keeps you going is just the stories that you hear from current advisors and the level of satisfaction there is in this job.
Yeah.
And the stories of clients and how they're helping them and the experiences people are having that they otherwise wouldn't have been able to if they hadn't got that advice.
It's certainly something I'm finding in the conversations that I'm having, really, whether people have stumbled in or intentionally walked in, that value that they provide and sitting with those clients and helping them get to where they want to get to and understand. You mentioned trust a few times. I'd be keen to know what your understanding or perception of financial advice and financial planning was before you'd had that work experience. Did you know the concept of it at all? Did you know? Because I think as a profession, it's still got a bit of trust issues. Now, your previous career probably is considered a lot more trustworthy, rightly or wrongly, whether financial services shouldn't be trusted, but there does seem to be a bit of an issue with that. So I'd like to hear your thoughts on that, if that's all right.
Yeah, I mean, it's something I'm still getting my head around myself. I don't know how my perception was really because I didn't really know the job existed except for that I knew Mark.
Which is a problem
And
in itself. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So I sort of knew of it through him, and that was pretty much it. And we didn't come from money, so we didn't have an advisor really. So there was my perception of him, which was very good, and certainly his business has done extremely well off the back of his reputation as a person and as well as a planner. But otherwise, I didn't really know what to think. I think only really from studying the profession and going through the ROs do you actually find out about some of the scandals and pension issues and
Yeah.
scams and everything that's happened. And I think there's a whole lot of history that comes with the profession and a whole lot of change that's happened recently with RDR and other such legislative changes. So I wouldn't say I had a negative view of the industry, but I know that there is one for many people. I think what's funny about it is that often people have quite a low view of planners until they have one,
Yes. Yeah.
and then they actually think it's great, and I think that's a real sign. But I guess the issue is getting someone to the point at which they trust you enough to engage in the process. And if you've got all this baggage from the past to work around, that's harder to get there. But then if you can show the value, it's often that I think it shows that given that so many practices build off the back of referrals, it really is about that relationship and the trust that builds between people. In terms of my old profession, yeah, I mean, I hope so. I hope I hope it's high trust, and I think we're all in trouble if it isn't. But I think I've already noticed how that's helped me personally coming from that background because it comes with its own level of trust. And that has really helped, especially in the niche I'm aiming in of doctors. So, yeah, yeah, there is definitely a differential there. But I think what's great about it is that once you get a client, it's converted and they'll sing your praises.
Yeah, absolutely. So you mentioned niche, which is an understandable one given your background. How are you going about building clients? You said it's one thing doing the exams,
Yeah.
it's a whole other thing entirely trying to build that client book. So I'd imagine former colleagues, people that you've worked with, was that the starting point?
Yeah, pretty much. It's a whole new world for me. I've never had problems with gathering patients before, so it's a whole different skill set, which I'm enjoying on the whole. So former colleagues, trying to get back in touch with people I've worked with, different hospitals, GP practices, even if it's just to let them know what I've done and
Yeah.
tell them the story. The thing that's been most impactful for me really is LinkedIn.
Mm.
And I kind of started it when I joined Quilter, started up my profile. So I've had it less than a year now, and just reaching out to people and connecting with people who I find interesting and starting up conversations. And it's basically how I've ended up on here. In case anyone's wondering how on earth has this guy got on, that's why. I just put myself out on LinkedIn, posting regularly, commenting with people. And I think what's cool with the LinkedIn space is it is attracting quite entrepreneurial doctors.
Yeah.
So people who've gone into different fields or have private practices. And so I associate with them a lot more because it's the journey I've been on. And yeah, that's what I'm trying to narrow into, which I suppose is a particularly small niche of entrepreneurial doctors, but I'm enjoying it so far.
Any of the other ones that may be feeling like you and thinking, I need to get out of this, and that's potentially a career path for them, seeing someone like yourself that has gone on to do something. What was it about it that obviously there's a lot of work that you would have put into doing those exams to qualify in the first place, to enter the medical profession, and then several years within it? What was the thing that made you decide that this isn't for me?
I wouldn't say there was any one moment. I think it was just a gradual accumulation. And training in particular as a junior doctor working towards what we call CCT, which is the certificate of completion of training. So that's the point that you become a GP or you become a consultant. And so it can take anywhere from 5 to 10, 12 years to get to that stage once you've past med school and once you finish med school. So it's a long road
Yeah.
and you're doing rotations of anywhere between 4 to 6 months in different jobs. So it might be in the same hospital or it might not be. So you might be in gastroenterology and then go into frailty and then go into psychiatry. And so you're on that conveyor belt of different jobs all the way through the process. The other factor is that often you have to move to get. So let's say I wanted to become a psychiatrist. It might be that there aren't any posts for me to train locally. So I might have to move around the country. And when you start to have a family, that has its whole additional amount of baggage that comes with it other than just selling your house. I look forward and I don't think I see the journey as worth doing for what I'm getting out of the work. I didn't find I could care for people in the way that I wish to. And I think that's probably why when I saw Mark do his client meetings, it was such an immediate attraction because I went from my experience of 15 minutes, 20 minutes with someone. So I was still in training at the point that I left. So I even had longer. You're trying to
Yeah.
build rapport, gain trust, ask them some potentially very embarrassing and deep questions, come up with a solution to those things, explain the solution, document all of it, put the plan in place, whether you're ordering tests or whether that's a scan or blood tests, booking in second appointments, and then potentially doing referrals on top. And all of that stuff has to sit within that 20 minutes or when you're qualified, even 10. And I just craved something more than that. And when I saw you can spend an hour with someone and you're not having to write the suitability report in the midst of the meeting and come up with the plan in the midst of the meeting, there's this, it's sort of given almost more weight and more importance than medicine is in a way, which I'm still coming to terms with. But yeah, and in terms of other people, there seems to be a growing cohort of doctors that are considering leaving. And I have had a few conversations with people who are intrigued. Like, well,
Yeah.
what are you doing? How
Yeah.
do I
That
get into that?
sounds good. I suppose some of the things that you do go into that for is to help people. And if you didn't feel that you're able to in the way that you wanted, that makes it more of a challenge in itself. So seeing an option like this and going, well, actually, I can really make a difference to someone's life. In medicine, we often talk about prevention is better than cure. And I suppose some of that translates to financial planning as well. If we can put something in place, if we can be working towards something, because we do know we've got some of those challenges later down the line that if people aren't saving for their retirement or they can't afford to do certain things. So we often talk in this privileged way of clients that are in a position that can, but we do have a bit of a population issue as well.
Yeah, and I think some of the tools that we have at our disposal make such a big difference. If you think of like cash flow planning or even just a simple shortfall calculator, you can put it in very absolute terms to someone that like this is the consequence of not putting this money away. This is what your life's going to look like in 20, 30 years or 10 years or whatever. In health, it's very difficult to be able to paint that picture for people and to be able to say like, well, if you carry on this route, you're probably not going to be able to pick up your grandkids, or you're not going to be able to get up out of the chair at 75, or you might fall down and not be able to get off the floor. Those are very concrete, real examples that happen every day to people. But in the context of healthcare at the minute, it's very, very difficult to have those long-term conversations. And I think one of the things I love most about this is you can have those in fact, the whole process is long-term. The whole focus is looking at the future and mapping it out and saying, this is the effect of you saving an extra 50 quid a month or 100 quid a month or £1,000 a month, whatever, and going, this is what it looks like in 10 years for you. And that can be, you could just focus purely on the maths around it. But I think the most beautiful part of it is that all of those things translate into experiences for people and
Yes.
have real world consequences. Like if you do this, you can retire X amount of years earlier. That, I remember you talking to Guy, and obviously he has his own compelling reasons behind why this is so important to him, but life is short. And I've seen a lot of that myself in the previous job. And you really want to give people those experiences because you just have no idea. You have no idea when it might happen. And to be able to gift that is amazing.
Yeah, but it was fascinating hearing Guy's story and how how passionate he is about financial planning and really trying to support people, having gone through such a tough time himself, experiencing that as a young child, losing his father, more recently his mother, and all the things that have come
Mm.
around as well. And I shared some of my personal experiences with him. And sorry, I think I may have said that the doctors wasn't exactly that potentially their bedside manner wasn't as well as I'd have hoped. And certainly a very different experience with nurses. And I know sometimes it is obviously just matter of fact, they're detached from that situation, have to be, because you're seeing things all the time. But the individual affected or the family affected, that's obviously completely different for them.
Mm.
So I can see that if there was frustrations there of why you might want to then take a slightly different path. You're obviously very used to exams, but what was it like doing the financial planning ones? You mentioned these ROs. For anyone that doesn't know what we're talking about, can you just give me a little idea of that process and those different things that you would have covered in some of them?
Yeah, of course. I'd just say, addressing the point you've just made, because it's something that's quite close to my heart, is I think it's the profession in medicine has moved on quite a lot in terms of the training, and being able to have discussions with people about really difficult topics is such an important part of the job, and is also directly relates to planning as well. And I think I'm very fortunate in that in medical school we had very, very good training on communication in situations like that. And I think often the older generations of medics didn't get that. And it is a skill set. And I think it's funny how some of them can be so caring, and they're just really not very good at showing it. And it's not good that you went through that. I'm sorry about that on behalf of my former profession.
Right.
But yeah, in terms of the ROs, so it's the selection of exams from CII in order to become a financial planner. It's the qualification you need. So there's 6 of them. 5 of them are multiple choice, and the 6th is kind of a live case study in exam conditions. In terms of how I found them, I really enjoyed them. And I think that's partly because it wasn't an accident thing, is that I'd spent a lot of time reading finance and personal finance and economics before I came in to doing the exams. And so I found it really refreshing that when I was reading some of this stuff, I was like, oh, I read that in a book and da 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 da. And so I just loved it. But I know I'm a bit abnormal in that sense. And I have done an awful lot of exams in my life. So I think a lot of exam performance is just how you are in the exam, and a lot less to do with how well you prepare for it within reason. So I think, having had a lot of exams in my life, I felt comfortable in that environment, being able to take them. I love that they're flexible and remote. You can take them whenever you want, and you can do them from home, which was super important for me, just to be able to go, I'm going to set a date. I know the kids are out that day. I'll be able to have the house to myself for a bit and get this exam done. And you can take it at your own pace. So if you're racing through a particular workbook, then you can take it whenever you feel you're ready, rather than waiting for a certain times of the year. This is just for the MCQs, because RO6 is done, I think, 4 times a year at set dates. And yeah, it's a big change from, again, medicine, where you have an exam and it's set. There's no workbook. You don't get practice mocks. That you just have to there are people who create software packages for you to use, but it's so good to have a workbook and go like, this is the topics that will come up. There may be some wider reading, but this is a clear syllabus. And so I think, and also they provide the practice exams as well. So yeah, I think it's coming from my background, I think the way they've structured it is great. I didn't love RO6. I found it a little bit of a guessing game, to be honest. It was definitely my worst performance, but the rest of them I really enjoyed.
Did you give yourself a time frame as when you wanted the exams done by, when you're going into this? Obviously, it's quite daunting, although you felt it was the right time to leave that profession, when it is something that you've known, to then go into this seemingly unknown, just, having had some experience, but not as much as you'd had elsewhere.
Uh, I didn't have a strict timeline. I think I just took them one at a time. So I did RO5 was my first one. I did that in like 4 weeks or something. And then RO1 after that, and again in like 4 to 6 weeks. RO2 took a lot longer because there was some other stuff going on in life, which meant it wasn't a priority at the time. But when I joined Quilter, I joined their academy, and they provide the structure for getting through the exams. At the point I joined them, I had 5, 2, and 1 under my belt already. So then I spent some time in the academy doing some extra ones on top before getting the other 3 under my belt. So I think it's definitely manageable to do them within 4 weeks of each other. It's intense, but it's definitely manageable, especially if that's your only focus. I think if you're doing a full-time job around it, I would definitely give yourself more time.
You've been used to very intense environments and working in that way, so it's probably hard to shift that mindset. But what was the academy process like then, Luke?
So the first 6 weeks or so are just focused on getting the qualification. The rest of the cohort started with no qualifications or experience and went from that exam every month all the way through to RO6. Once you've taken RO6, we did a process of advisor skills training, basics of what's it like being self-employed and what are the things you need to do, what are the filings like, and then the soft skills, which is a phrase I hate, but it works. But there's how to be personable and thinking about how can you communicate well, and what then we started to do practices. So like mock exams, mock role plays with the academy managers to start to introduce the structure of how each of the meetings would go, whilst also trying to learn the key points that you need to include. Then for quilters specifically, they have a quilt away, which is kind of their introduction to the specific proposition that they have and how the advice process needs to work. And then the final, well, there's 3 stages. The stage that I'm just finishing now is the additional skills, which is a bit more specific on and a bit more intense in terms of having the mocks, and they actually have to kind of go well. They're not just a practice. And then the final stage is the pre-CAS, which is where I'm at now. So that's them supporting us to get those cases in to become competent advisor. So it's quite comprehensive. I mean, of course, it's still scary. You start and you actually are seeing clients for the first time. Nothing really can prepare you for that. But overall, I've been really impressed with the support.
And now for a few words from our content partner, Scottish Widows.
Making it easier for advisors, Scottish Widows brings market expertise, dedicated distribution support, and practical insights on the topics that matter, from consumer duty to the protection gap. You'll find advisor-ready tools, explainer content, protection insights, and regular thought leadership, alongside a team that can help with cases big and small. For more information about Scottish Widows and the support it provides to advice firms, speak to our business development team by emailing protectsales@lloydsbanking.com.
When you did start putting that into practice, seeing clients, what did that feel like? When I was training to be a journalist, I remember you do all the theory. It was quite a hands-on post-grad course, so you felt prepared for it. But then when you did actually join a newspaper and was suddenly, I'm doing this for real now. This is actually going out to people. I'm not playing at it anymore. What did that feel like?
It felt similar to the transition from med school to the foundation training, in that someone saying, you're safe, you can practice, we trust you, is another thing. It being for an exam or someone watching over you every move. And to be fair, foundation is very well supervised, but it's still that first time that you go and sit across from someone and you take a history for the first time, or you do an examination and it's your name at the bottom of the sheet. And it felt similar to that. I would say probably slightly less nerve-wracking than those early days, I think, because I've got years of experience behind me now. And I think the thing I'm most thankful for is just all of those years of conversations with strangers, which is, it's just really, really helps for starting out here. And I think if anyone else has that client facing or patient facing role, I think planning is a really good fit if they're thinking of a different career, because it is just that. It's just being able to have conversations naturally with people. Of course, it's focused and you're gathering information, which you probably were doing in your previous role. But I think I feel very thankful for all of those years of experience before I started. And I think the other thing to mention is that I find this a lot more exciting. So it's really lovely to go into this, and there's the fear and there's the anxiety, but there's also excitement and enthusiasm and thinking, well, let's see how this first year goes. It could be amazing. Let's find out, rather than I know what this next year is. I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to do that, and I'm going to do this. And then it finishes, and maybe I pass the year, maybe I don't, which almost everyone does. But there's always that fear. Whereas here, it's who knows? Who knows how many clients I'll have? Who knows what they'll be like? But that's part of the fun.
Yeah, absolutely. Figuring out where the next ones come from. As you touched on, really, financial planning is a profession that is open to people from all walks of life. And whether we're talking about young people, trying to attract them into it, but also second careerists, if you've had something else elsewhere and then you think, actually, I can come into it, it is opening in that sense, like say, whether people know about it or what approach they should take. But I think it is something that is worth us bearing in mind of this can be open to a lot of people that have got skills elsewhere that could be transferred to this, and that helping people and just trying to, like we said, the soft skills for want of a better phrase, but that's coming up more and more as being so important. Yes, it's great to have the technical knowledge. You have to have that. You have to pass the exams, but that's sitting in front of someone, finding out about them, getting to know them as a person. Actually, from conversations I've had recently, a lot of people say money doesn't come up for quite some time. It's trying to find out what they want to do and make that possible.
I think maybe people discount themselves from it because they've not got a financial background. But I think if you've got the interest there, and really if you've got an interest in people, I think that's probably more than enough. And I think especially with the way the future looks to be going, and with AI and other advancements in tech, that I'm not sure the technical bit of it is actually going to be nearly as important. And I think it really is going to be about whether you're able to connect with people well. That might not be that you need to come from a financial services background to do that. You might be really good at the technical stuff or have a background in investments, but if you can't connect with people, they can't feel that you care about them, then I think you're probably going to struggle more than someone who doesn't even have any investment knowledge at all until they enter the industry for the first times. Yeah, I think the barrier one is that no one knows what the job is. And then I think the second barrier is often that people discount themselves from it because they think, oh, I don't know anything about investments or maths. But if you've got the interest in it at all, I think it's worth looking into at least, or doing work experience like I did, just to see what it's really like. So I think people's perception of what we do versus what we actually do is quite different.
Yeah, absolutely. Of what people think, definitely. And obviously, I suppose it's on all of us to try and help shift that perception to show that it's not always what you hear elsewhere or what you may just suddenly think of it as for some reason. I think on one of your LinkedIn posts, Luke, you described yourself as a good doctor. I'm sure you were more than good, but you're hoping to be a great advisor. That was something that stood out to me. What is it that you think then makes a great advisor?
What makes a great advisor? I think I've learned from a lot of people in the industry since starting, people I look up to, people like Guy, Keith Button, the guys on the Trap podcast. I think the primary thing really is just that they care about the clients first, and that they won't compromise that value first. That if there's a decision that benefits them a little bit but isn't quite right, they won't choose that option. So I think really the thing for me is it's all integrity first. That if you have to care about the person in front of you more than you care about your own interests, because otherwise, what is the point of you? Someone can go and care about themselves better than you. Obviously, we've got the knowledge and everything, but if we're not directing it to help them as much as we can, then why are they paying us? So I think I see that. I see helping them beyond just the planning. I think I see a lot of this idea of being more of a life coach, having conversations with people that no one else is having. So no one has sat down with me and gone, what do you want out of your life? What do you want? What means the most to you? What would you do if you knew you didn't have very long left? These kind of questions are quite disturbing on their face, but they lead hopefully to a life that you're more happy with on your deathbed. So I think that, and I think the FCA is kind of pushing towards this with the client specific outcomes. And certainly it comes through in all the compliance that we all know. But really, I think if we can truly dig into what is most meaningful to our clients and touch on those beliefs and ideas and dreams that no one else has come across, is there anything more valuable than that? Is there any other profession or professional that is going to be able to help them, apart from maybe life coaches.
Yeah.
But, being able to package that up with the structure of a plan financially to be able to help them get towards it, I think it's just such an incredible thing that we have the opportunity to do. So I think that's what I think of when I think of a great planner, is someone who's got the whole person and their whole life in mind, and you're advocating for their future, them, and you're willing to hold their feet to the fire a bit and go, what do you want out of life? Is this what you want out of life? And how can we get you more of that? So yeah, I think and what I missed in medicine really was that forward looking, generative, preventative idea, rather than kind of just dealing with the problems that crop up.
Yeah, that integrity you mentioned, it's such a shame that we do have these trust issues as such then, because obviously, as usual, probably the vast majority are doing the right thing by their
Yeah.
clients, making sure, but as we know, it only takes a few bad apples to tarnish and like you said, some of those stories and scandals and things that have happened in the past. What does sound promising is that those are being mentioned in those study materials, I suppose. So to really try and show you, okay, this is what it looks like when it's gone wrong, and therefore putting people on the right path to, okay, if you are entering this profession, it is a profession now, it does have high standards. You do have to have these qualifications and these skills and all of these things combined. So I suppose there's some positives that we can take from that we are trying to learn those lessons of the past.
Yeah, and I agree. And I think they are being learned. And I think I've entered the profession in a really positive time, actually, that there's people leading from the front who are the thought leaders, who are sort of having these conversations and talking about what is the ethos, what's driving us to do these things. And I suppose I kind of like it that a lot of them are actually just calling out things as they see them, what they perceive as the bad habits and the bad practices at the time. Because when it's live, it's all well and good learning about what happened 30 years ago or however long it was with Maxwell or whatever. But what about today? What are the mistakes that we're making today? And how can we personally avoid them in our own practice? Because you want to avoid that foreseeable harm today rather than
Yeah, absolutely.
waiting for it to blow up and ruining the trust. And yeah, I think I want to make sure I'm clear that I'm not saying the profession's like absolutely full of dodgy people. You're right, it is a small cohort of people that have tarnished the profession. And I think it's also the degree to which it happened, because obviously medicine has had its own scandals. I guess the problem with money is that the consequences can be a lot broader, a lot easier. If you have a fund, that's an awful lot of people are being affected by that. Whereas one doctor, there will be several people, but it won't be on the same scale. So I think it is tricky when people are given positions of power that have such an effect over so many different people, that you're relying on their integrity to a certain extent to keep the profession in good faith.
And you're
But
right,
yeah,
obviously this is individuals that are at the heart of all of this as well, because I think the wider financial services industry can sometimes be quite guilty of talking about assets under management, these vast numbers, really, really big things. But ultimately, that's someone's retirement fund, that's someone's future. So it becomes
Mm.
a very individual, personal subject. So I'm sure your client doesn't care how much you've got overall. It's, well, you're managing mine, you're looking after me and my future and those hopes and dreams that we've talked about and how I can achieve them. Great that you're doing those for those other clients as well. But I need to know that I'm being looked after. You mentioned a few names within the profession as well, people that have stood out to you. Do you feel it has been a rather welcoming, supportive community to join?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, as much as I say it's difficult practically to get in, I think I must have spoken to like 10 or 15 advisors in the last year and just reached out and said, tell me, what's it like? Have you got any tips? And I've spent hours and hours on Zoom calls with advisors who are just willing to help, just willing to give out their time. And then there's the whole, away from the personal stuff, there's the podcasts and masterclasses that I've been able to get on. And I think what's clear is that the people at the top of the profession really do genuinely care that the profession gets better and that the young advisors are supported. And I think in some ways it puts the medical profession to shame, in that I can't believe the number of different people that have reached out and offered help, and little incubators and massive incubators and group chats. And yeah, I found it super welcoming. I think I just want to pick up on the point that you mentioned with the money, the funds thing, and it being individual, because it's very important to me. Is I think that money is someone's life. Like, they've exchanged their life and their years and days and weeks and months to get that money and to build it up over time. And yeah, it's been invested and has grown. But I think the way I try and view it is like, they need that to exchange the life they have traded for it today, so that they can have a life that they want more of tomorrow. And hopefully it's not completely that binary, but yeah, it's more than money. It's a lot more than money, that what that means to people. And I think that's kind of the ethos that I'm gathering from the top of the industry, is that this is so much more than money and
Yeah.
funds.
Absolutely. What do you find challenging in this role? You've come in, you've got that fresh perspective of what it looks like and what's going well, but I suppose also what could be improved.
I'm conscious I'm very, very green at this, so I'm not sure I've got much of a place to complain. The initial things is not just the volume of paperwork, but the way it has to be done in a very, very structured fashion. And I think medicine had a lot of it. Definitely. I can't argue that. But I think it was more obvious in medicine that I was trying to document what had actually happened.
Yeah.
And I think it seems to me, and I'm happy to be corrected, that we're very focused on making sure that the wording is such that we can't get sued, and maybe perhaps less about, does the client actually understand what's going on here? And when we've got pages and pages of suitability reports to go through, I think that's boring to most planners to read through, never mind the client who doesn't have the background and the qualification. So I think it is that process is quite onerous, and the number of steps and signatures and processes. And I understand why it's there, but I wonder, and I hope there may be in the future a way to streamline that a bit without sort of putting people at risk.
It does feel something needs to be done because we have a lack of engagement. People don't want to engage with their pension products or these financial things. And part of that is because trying to get your head around what some of this means, or the jargon, or the paperwork that comes with it. And I suppose like in medicine as well, there'll be very complex names for things and what that means and what that looks like. But I suppose part of the job is to explain to the patient, well, you need this for this reason, or this is treating this, or this is helping this thing. And you're right. I think, people probably seek financial advice. They want to get that plan, but they want someone to take the headache away from them. They don't want it to be added. And if anything, it's like, yes, I do trust you to get on with this. That's fine. And of course, within reason, we do need to make sure, and belts and braces, that is okay. But have we gone a bit too far the other way?
Yeah, I guess it kind of translates back to the trust thing, that if you really do trust someone, we need guardrails, but does it need to be quite so tight? And does the trust mean anything if everybody is going by this very rigorous process? I don't have an answer. I've only just started. I hope maybe that the profession continues to progress and the experiences clients have improves. But I think my suspicion, if that does happen, which I think it will, that would actually be due to the quality of and the integrity of individuals that are looking after their clients, more than it has to do with the number of hoops they have to jump through. And so it might be that there's ways of discouraging people who are in it to scam people out of a quick buck. It's certainly a full advice process. It's a lengthy and arduous thing to go through to scam someone for. Perhaps it's deterring people that way, but I don't have an answer.
Quite fascinating with Consumer Duty when that came in, and you thought, surely these firms should be doing this sort of stuff anyway. But it's that evidencing, isn't it? And suggesting some of these things. But equally, the bad players, I reckon, aren't probably going to go, yes, okay, that's got me. If people are that inclined, I think they'll always find a way to get around systems, or obviously just ignore them completely. So I doubt those types of people are the ones fully reading every part of Consumer Duty and making sure they're applying that as much as they should. So what about your personal life, Luke? You mentioned obviously there's a few other things sort of going on, and family and stuff like that. What do you do in your your spare time if you've got any?
Not much at the minute. Family was kind of one of the reasons I left medicine, actually. So my son, who's just turned 4, that was kind of a turning point in the career for me, because I was working mostly in hospital settings and doing shifts and nights and weekends,
And hardly him,
and
probably.
hardly seeing him and hardly sleeping when I was in the house.
Yeah.
It, yeah, I realized like, oh, I'm just not going to see him. I'm just not. And I missed his like first steps and all of kind of these milestones that come along. And I was like, oh, is this what it's going to be like for the whole journey? And bearing in mind I had several years to get to CCTing at that point. And then one of the triggers was my daughter coming along, and she's almost 2. And it was at the point that she was born was kind of, I think, the final stages of me leaving. I was like, I actually don't like who I am at
Yeah.
home because of the job I'm doing. And it's one thing to not see them, but it's also there's being present at home physically, but then there's being present.
Yes. Yeah.
And I wasn't present. I was, recovering or mulling over things in my head and not really being in the moment, and not as tolerant and as gentle as I should have been as a father to young kids. So that was a big trigger for me to be like, you don't like who you are at home.
Yeah.
This is what's important. Now I might leave the NHS in 30 years and get a nice watch and a great pension, but if my kids hate my guts, what
Yeah.
have I won? So I think that was a trigger. So yeah, I think the flexibility of being self-employed and being able to take time off when you need to, and support my wife, who's now stay at home, which I kind of made that decision just before I started this. So yeah, it's just prioritizing the things that are most important to you. And I think having my kids raised by my wife, who's amazing, way better mother than I will ever be a father already. So
I'm sure that find everyone has their own things to offer, right?
yes, yeah. Well, we've stuck to our strengths.
But I think one thing that stands out is the fact that you did something about it. You know, you realized you wasn't happy in this situation, and you thought, only I can change that. And I think that's probably going to put you in good stead as a financial planner to say to someone, well, look, what is it you want to do? What is it you're not happy with? A few times it's come up about retirement and that purpose and what you're doing. But for some people, it probably can't come quick enough because they're not enjoying what they're doing currently. They dread Monday morning or whatever days it may be, or nights or anything like that. So part of that is that escape. We want to get away from it. But if you're enjoying what you're doing, you've got a sense of purpose and you're liking that, that's great. And I remember leaving a journalism job. I'd wanted to do that. You'd qualified, you got the job. And about a year and a half, 2 years later, you're thinking, I don't feel like I'm a very nice person now, or the way that this
Yeah.
was going. And you're coming home and you're right. You just sort of thought, I don't like this. I need to do something about it. And I made the risk of leaving journalism, eventually got back in later on, and being fine since. But at that time, you thought, no, I'm not enjoying this
Yeah.
anymore, and who it's making me. So I think the fact that you've lived that experience and the clients that you're then dealing with, I think that just probably shows a little bit more of that personality as well. And actually, I can trust this person because they've lived it and breathed it themselves.
Yeah, and I think part of that wanting to give more than just the financial side is also trying to foster the courage in other people to make those big decisions. Because there's a thing that I heard on a podcast a while back called the beta paradox. And it's like if you have a situation that's a bit naff, you don't really like, but it's tolerable, you'll stay in it forever. But it's not until that situation is intolerable and you're like, this is just not, I'm just cannot deal with this anymore, that people jump ship and they find an alternative. And the weird thing is when it gets so bad, often you end up in a better position than staying in that sort of tolerable middle ground. And certainly that's my experience, is that it just dipped too much. I was like, this is taking too much from me. It's taking all of the hours of the day, and it's taking my time at home away from me. That's too many things. It's got too much from me and I need to find something else. And I think it's not just medicine. It happens in all kinds of fields and all kinds of jobs. And I think giving people that, discussing those kinds of things and the effect it's having, and maybe I know quite a few career coaches or coaches that work for medics specifically, if I can go, you need to have a conversation with this person, and I think it'd be really helpful, whether they stay in the job and they get on with it much better, or they make the big decision like I did to leave. I just want to make sure that people aren't wasting their life, because that's what it felt like I was doing. And I think fear is such a big thing to overcome. You have all these ideas in your head about what will or won't happen, but rarely is it, oh, it's going to be much better than I thought, or it's going to be much better than it currently is. And I just hope that people can grasp a bit of that in their life and get some better experiences out of life, whether that's work or otherwise.
Yeah. So are you putting your own financial plan in place, Luke, or do you have a different advisor or planner helping you?
I'm putting my own in place. I'm not sure if the loan shark counts. I'm kidding. But yeah, no, it was kind of a calculated decision. And the lead up to me leaving, we had, which is kind of where the interest came from, was personal finance and investing on my own. And I certainly made my mistakes doing that, but it afforded me the opportunity to leave. And that, I suppose, in itself is kind of the whole point of financial planning, isn't it? Is to be able to have enough of a buffer and assets to do the things that you really want to out of life. So, I mean, perhaps I'm being hypocritical, and I should actually get an advisor myself.
You've probably got other advisors that you're learning from along the way, as we've realized anyway. Is there a personal money rule that you live by?
Personal money rule. Well, it was spend less than I earn up until the last few years, which has been a sort of a break from that steady income rule. I think that's as good a rule as any. I think my attitude changed massively after reading Die with Zero by Bill Perkins.
It's come up a few times. I haven't read it yet, actually, but I feel like I need to.
I found it really helpful as someone who was very much stuck in the mindset of like, we just need to get this compounding going and don't touch the snowball, let it roll down the hill. Bringing that perspective in of like, who cares if you're the richest guy in the graveyard? Like, it's all going to zero for you anyway. And what do you actually want to do with it? So I think that it's spend less than you earn, but it's also don't die with no memories. Don't die with a life that you wish you'd spent money on and you'd spent doing experiences or even buying things that are really important to you. So yeah, I think it's trying to balance those two. You don't want to be reckless, but you also don't want to, it's kind of like a weird stinginess. It's like you might be really wealthy, but you're also being really like
I think
stingy about spending
that's a
it.
really interesting thing about financial planning, that sometimes there's that mindset of, I've got to save, I've got to do this for the future, I've got to, and yes, you're right, you don't want to be reckless in anything and have the detriment of now, and then you do live a longer life. But equally, if you're not enjoying some of it now, what's the point? Because we can all put off these things of, well, next year I'll do that, and in 5 years' time I'll do that. And as we've said, we don't know. That's not guaranteed. Tomorrow's not guaranteed. But trying to find that balance of, well, if I do have many more tomorrows, I'm okay, but I haven't done it at the expense of today. And I think that I find that just such a fascinating thing of financial planning, because arguably more of us should be starting that process earlier and trying to have those discussions with people, because I think we do have, like I said before, a bit of an issue where people are coming out. We know there's the whole student loan baits and stuff at the moment as well, which is essentially people have for longer. All of this, and it's on you as an individual of your retirement and what that looks like. There's a lot of responsibility there, I suppose. So if someone can have their hand held and someone to help them along the way.
Yeah, and I think that's why the Paul Armisen Enough framework is so powerful, because
I've read that book.
yeah, it's just so helpful to people, because once you calm those nerves of like fear, like, oh my goodness, what happens if I run out? That fear is enough to stop them enjoying the rest of their life. And I think people will bias to certain directions when there'll be people who are particularly cautious and focused on investing and saving. And then there'll be people who are very much live by the moment. And I guess financial planning attracts those cautious people, the people who are focused on the future and investing. And maybe part of the role is not to help them keep as much of those assets under management as possible, but actually help them live a life that they're happy with a bit more and help enable that. Because often people are looking for permission
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah, that often, I suppose, a lot of people that come and see a financial advisor have probably done a lot of right things along the way anyway, but maybe being told, yes, you can spend that or you can do that. And I think that's cropped up a few times of we're just giving that person that permission. Um, because as we're coming to an end, what's a successful year going to look like for you? What do you hope to achieve now you're on this journey?
It's a question I've been asking myself. I'm not 100% sure I've got an answer to it yet, but
I
I
don't know,
think
I always
something,
do either.
yeah, yeah, I think if I had, if I've grown a client bank of people that I really like to work with and I really like as people and have been on a similar journey to me, I think that would probably be success, is having people that I've started with who I want to take it all the way to the
Yeah.
end, and kind of like a community growing. And so I think that's kind of the primary aim for me.
Where you're focusing on that niche, do you think that will expand out, or you're just going to stay there? Because obviously, I suppose if someone that you're advising is a doctor, but potentially their partner has a different career, are you open to that as well and go across that way?
Yeah, for sure. I think it's all, I think I'm going to focus my efforts towards that niche. But if people are saying, oh, we really like what you did for us, can you speak to our friend? I'm certainly not going to say no, at least not in these stages, and probably never. But yeah, I think it's just about a focus in terms of my personal brand and marketing. But yeah, I'm open to helping many different kinds of people.
Yeah, well, the brand of marketing's working. I saw stuff, and that's how I'm finding a lot of advisors at the moment, like that LinkedIn. And although it is potentially other advisors, and you want to speak to a little bit wider, it's just showing people that you're out there, and it does start paying off, I think. So, thank you so much for joining me. I've really appreciated it.
Thank you for having me. It's been good.
Expertise that helps make advice easier. Distribution support, advisor tools, and thought leadership from Scottish Widows. For more information about Scottish Widows and the support it provides to advice firms, speak to our business development team by emailing protectsales@lloydsbanking.com.